for everyone, and I'm gonna just kick off. So I have some, like I said to everyone, if you have questions, just send a question into the chat. I'll get to it at the end, hopefully. And I'll talk for about maybe 20 minutes as we move on. So let's see if I can start sharing my screen with everyone. And as I said, all of the files that I'm going to share with you are available now. So hopefully you can see my my screen, and as that happens, you should be able to see when I move it forward or not. Okay, so I wonder, can I still admit people as I'm going though? So I haven't done that before. Let me just stop the share, because for some reason I can't admit people when this is being shown. So what I might do is I might just, yeah, let everyone in and then move on. So like I said, there are these resources available. And if I can figure out how to admit everyone at the same time, because everyone should, if anybody knows how to let me admit everyone, because this is the first time I've done this, I will do that. Okay, so invite more. So I'm going to turn off the waiting room, hopefully, and that should just let everyone in. Okay. All right. Cool. So people will just come in now, and there's like 100 people here already. So I will try to share my screen and make the most use of all of your time, and hopefully everyone can come in as necessary. Okay. So yeah, let's start sharing the screen. So let me first off say how envious actually I am of all of you learning economics at this time. It's a particularly weird time to be learning economics. That's fair, but it's also an incredibly interesting moment to be able to learn this incredibly useful and challenging and interesting subject. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to take you through some resources about the research study that you're going to do. And then I really wanted to get your questions. So I'll speak for about maybe 25 minutes. And then at the end, we can talk for as long as we have. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and I want to make sure that you guys get the most out of it. So let's kick off. What is research? How to do it? How to write your own research question? That's the first part. Very, very important. Second, how to think about structuring an answer. So when you have to come to think about writing your research question, how do you think about writing it? Third, do we need to cover everything? This is a question that's come up a fair bit on the email and a fair bit on Twitter. 4, what's a good source? Where do I find reliable info? 5, some tips on revising and writing to be understood. And then we'll finish off the last sort of 20-25 minutes of the hour. We'll talk about questions. Also, the Kimmy Business School, when they found out that I was doing this, they insisted that I add some promotional material to the end of the slide deck, so that you can click on and find out about all of our many excellent courses, which I'll just say they're all awesome, and you should think about applying. But there's more detail for you there at the end anyway. So, okay, what is research? How to do it? How to write your own research question? This is a brilliant book, Booth et al. From 2016. It's called The Craft of Research. It's been around for, in note form, for about 30 years. It's really, really good. And I would advise that the teachers at least, but maybe even the students, buy this book. It's really fantastic. If you don't have the money to buy the book, or if there aren't library resources available to you guys, what I suggest is you have a read of my notes. So I made notes for everyone about this book, and they're on the Dropbox link. So if you just click notes on craft of research, you'll get that. So I have chapter by chapter notes of the book for you guys. It's a brilliant book though, and I really think you should all read it, or at least go through chapters 3 and 4, because they tell you how to form a research question, which is very important when thinking about the rest of the course, or for the rest of the study. So what is research, ladies and gentlemen? Well, what is research? It's gathering information needed to answer a question. So if we just parse that for a second, gathering information needed to answer a question. So you gather it. How are you going to gather it? You can get it from the internet. You can go and interview people. You can look at statistical sources. You can do anything. Most of you will probably be looking up stuff on the internet. Okay, that's called secondary or tertiary data capture. It's information, so it's not opinions, it's not YouTube videos, it's information. It's sort of the GDP of Ireland in 2016 was X billion, that kind of thing. Needed to answer a question. So you have to actually have a question to answer, and it's in structuring that question that the rest of your research study will come. Okay. So research is really important. Research by others determines what most of us believe in the real world. So NEFIT, the National Public Health Emergency Team, they're in the news today because the research that they've done and the data that they're looking at is forcing them to ask the government to lock the country down to level 5 again. And we'll know probably later on today whether the government agrees with them. But why do you write up research? Why don't you just find something out? Well, the answer is you do it first to remember. So you actually have to structure your own thinking. You do it to understand, and then you do it to gain perspective. So very, very, very important. Research is how you establish facts and how society kind of moves forward. And if I can give you guys one piece of advice, one recommendation, it's to get the craft of research and get stuck into that. Can everyone mute their microphones, please, while I'm having the app, and then later on we'll be able to have questions. Thanks. Okay, so yes, and there's a link to the craft of research there at the bottom of the page, and like I said, I've got the notes there for you. So how to think about structuring an answer, ladies and gentlemen? Well, when you think about this, the first thing you should be asking yourself is how do you parse the question? So your theme, you have a theme, and your theme is the COVID crisis has revealed a number of critical challenges in relation to Ireland's economic, environmental, and social sustainability. So what you should realize first off, folks, is that is not a question. Okay, you haven't been told discuss Ireland's fiscal sustainability in the context of COVID-19. You haven't been asked to talk about the environmental degradation as a result of economic processes. That sort of thing. So you haven't been asked any of that. Well, you've been given a theme, and it's your job as the researcher. So each and every one of you, all the students and all of the teachers doing the Leaving Cert this year under incredibly challenging circumstances. So fair play to all of you for your resilience. Each of you has to structure your own individual answer, and that's what makes it research, because you are trying to answer your own question. So a very important thing when you're thinking about how structuring a question is, who is your audience? Well, the SEC has told you, the State Exam Commission has told you that the audience is either individuals or a business, or the government and policymakers. So these two things are very, very important. So when you think about this stuff, what I want you to do is start thinking about the research questions. So a question might be, like I mentioned, how has COVID-19 contributed to the degradation of social sustainability? Are economic, environmental, and social sustainability connected in some way, and are they compromised by COVID? So you're taking the theme and you're asking a question, and the question, the structure of the question, we'll come to in a moment. So identify the parts and how they interrelate. So the parts here are the economic, environmental, and social sustainability. How are they part of a larger system? Well, they're part of a larger system of society. You have society outside, and you've got the economy on the inside. We're part of a society. We're not part of an economy. It's a different thing. One is less than the other. Okay, it's very important to remember that. The other important thing is, when you do research, you're typically doing research to change someone's mind or to inform them. And so the person that you're writing to really matters. If I were doing this, I would write it to the Minister for Finance, right? I would write it to Pascal Donoghue, who's the current Minister for Finance, at least at this time of recording. So you must trace your topic's development over time. So COVID didn't start yesterday. We have about a year of data on COVID, maybe a year or two. You could compare COVID to the 1918 pandemic, for example, and so forth. Is this an episode in a larger history? Well, yeah, it's another global crisis. So you could compare the COVID crisis to the 2008 crisis if you want, okay? Identify its characteristics and categories that include it. So what kind of crisis is this? And can you think about your topic in this mode? What is the value that your work reflects? So does your work show, for example, that COVID is a really bad thing for the economy, but it's actually quite good for the environment because emissions have dropped, we're traveling less, and so forth, right? Maybe you want to focus on the fact that COVID has been relatively bad for gender relations. So the gender pay gap has widened, COVID has impacted women far more than men, and so forth. You get to choose which parts of the topic are most valuable to you, and then structure your question around that. In the end, is your topic useful? Can you overcome the most important question, which is a bored reader going, so what? Okay, that's very, very important. So how do you do this? How, like really, brass tacks, how do you get this done? You do it a couple of ways. The first is you refine your research question. And everybody, the teachers and the students now, I'd like you to have a go at this. So with me, okay? So the way you do it is you structure it in 3 sentences. And this is the introduction to your research study. This is how you find your a question to answer, but this is also precisely how you tell the reader of your research study what it is you're doing, why it matters, and how you're going to proceed with your answer. So I am studying X. Let's say X is the impact of COVID on the gender pay gap as it relates to, the gender pay gap, because I want to find out how it relates to economic, social, and environmental sustainability in order to show that policies intended to help women who are most affected by the COVID crisis should be prioritized in the upcoming budget. Okay, so I am studying X, and X is your topic, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm not giving it to you, your teachers aren't giving it to you. You're given a theme, but underneath the theme, you get to choose anything you like. The way to think about this is imagine there's 4 of you, you're in a band, and somebody hands you drums, 2 guitars, and a microphone, and they say, go, right? The theme is those instruments, and you get to choose how you make the music, right? And so why does all this matter? It matters for a couple of reasons. The first is you tell the reader precisely what your topic is, but also you tell yourself. Okay, so you refine this. So step 3 is what really matters here. It gives the claim to the reader's interest, and when it's strong enough, they'll read your work carefully. For God's sake, ladies and gentlemen, do not bury the lead. Okay, what that means is the most important part of your story needs to be at the top. Okay, it needs to be at the very top of the discussion. Otherwise, you're in deep trouble. So here's another way to think about this. Again, if you want, ladies and gentlemen, do it with me. Okay, here's the topic. I am studying the impact of COVID on environmental sustainability, because I want to find out how, or who, or why, or how the environment and the economy are interrelated in a time of both global economic crisis, and global environmental crisis. Significance in order to propose policies that improve both the economic and environmental sustainability of the Irish economy into the 21st century, something like that, right? That's your first paragraph of your thesis. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is hard, okay? It's a hard job, and you're going to have to redo it again and again and again and again and again. And until you get it right, you're not, it won't sound as crisp as I've just described it there. You must solve a problem for your readers. You must actually get them from a place where they thought one way and now they think another at the end of your research. You write scientifically to convince others you solved the problem. No, nothing else. So what you're looking at on the left there is a paper outline for a PhD student of mine. So this is not just for Leaving Cert students or anybody else. I do this myself in my own research. Okay, I literally write down, you know, my topic. So this is Michael's topic. He's studying the impact of intangible assets on production, markup, and multi-factor productivity dynamics. Doesn't matter what those things are, ladies and gentlemen. The point is, you now know what he's studying, because he wants to find out if the influence of markups are growing and impacting firms, in order to help the reader understand if intangible assets are enabling large firms to gain greater market power, thereby tilting the balance of competition toward larger firms. So question, topic, question, significance. Each time. When you do it like that, ladies and gentlemen, you will be in a much stronger place, I think. And I would ask the economics teachers, do your best back and forth to refine these paragraphs with your students. So here on the right hand side of this slide is the actual report structure and the outline marking scheme. So the way to think about this is the SEC telling you how they think you should structure your essay. So if the marks are there on the extreme right hand side of your screen, that should really give you a sense of the proportions of the essay to put in there, you know. So I wouldn't spend, for example, there's 1,500 words. I would not spend 1,300 words on an introduction, because they can only give you 15 marks. Okay, so an indicative structure might be something like 100-word introduction, 200 words for key literature, 500 words for a model and some data. They don't count figures and tables, so you can add graphs, you can add tables and so forth. Your conclusion should be 200, and and your references should be, they're not counted either. And I'll come to the references at the end. So if you look up the introduction section there, just where I've highlighted it there, state the individual line of inquiry as an economic question, problem, or issue which is to be addressed. That's your problem statement. Okay, that's where you say, I am studying in order to, because. Okay, and then the next thing for 40 marks, the research process should be based on the application of concepts of economic theory to the line of inquiry. That is, you can't have a rant about how the health system is broken. Okay, you can't have a rant about how higher education is really a sham or anything like that. Opinions are great, and everyone's entitled to one, but you're not entitled to your own facts. And this is a research study. So do your best to focus everything on economic models, which I'll come to in a minute. And then finally, reflect on the insights gained from engagement with the research study. So here, you really should have a bit at the end going, I started out this study thinking that the environment wasn't very important. Or I started out thinking the environment was very important, and it turns out it's not as important, or whatever, okay? Finally, communication, presentation, and overall coherence. These are the easiest marks to get, ladies and gentlemen. All you have to have is an indicative structure, like I've shown there. So clearly section headings, clearly number the section headings, make sure it's referenced properly, make sure the figures and graphs are titled, and make sure that it's well written. And I'll come back to that at the very end. Do we need to cover everything? So this is a key question that I've been asked several times, and my answer is no. You can't cover absolutely everything in this giant theme. But I don't think the SEC, and if the SEC correct what I'm saying, of course listen to them. But for me, right now, I think you need to nod to each of them. You need to say, well, look, you know, there is an economic problem, there is an environmental problem, there is a social sustainability problem. But I don't think there's a state of the world where you're going to be able to cover all these things in 1,500 words. What you have to do is define your research question and answer it using the best resources available. Now, it's very important, as I showed you in the marking scheme, it's very important to think in terms of economic models applied to economic data, okay? A model is a way to structure your thinking about a complex topic. So you've seen supply and demand, oligopoly, monopoly, and so forth. You might not have seen what's called ecological or integrated macro models before. So one is the one on the right there that I'm showing you. That's Kate Raworth's Donut Economics. Her book is excellent, but if you want to watch her lectures, just click that link there and it'll take you through to very short lectures on what the donut problem is. Basically, this is her model of the economy. So you have, everything from water, food, health, education, income and work, peace and justice, social equity, gender inequality, and so forth. You have, the social foundation for higher living standards, and then you have the ecological ceiling for everything: oceans, climate change, air pollution, and land conversion, and so forth. And the idea is, if you spend too long focusing on just income and work, which is basically where economists spend their time, and not thinking about all of these things, you're in trouble, because you basically push yourself into a place where you're overshooting and you're going past the carbon budget of society. Okay, so that's a good example of an economic model that actually ties together all of the economic, social, and sustainable things. And one of the links that's given to you in the State Examinations Commission booklet is actually a link to a NESC paper, National Economic and Social Council, a NESC paper which refers to some of these issues. So this is much more old school economics, which you've seen before, right? So these are some macro shocks that you might want to talk about. So there's obviously a productivity shock, right? So people can't go to work. What's going to happen? There's a relationship in economics called the Phillips curve, which talks about the rate of inflation and unemployment. Unemployment's moved out, obviously. Lots more people are employed, so inflation must fall. So the Phillips curve is shifting down, okay? There's a new equilibrium level of employment. Who knows what that is? It could be, instead of 2.3 million, it could be 2.1 million. It could be even lower. Okay. There's an inflation shock as well, when all of the savings that everyone has goes out. So right now, that you guys have all studied the macroeconomic accounting identity. So you know that Y is equal to C minus S. So you can spend your income either in consumption or in savings, and our savings rate is 35% now. So that means for every euro you earn an income, or the country earns an income, it's saving 35 cents. So what happens when everyone spends that money? Obviously, inflation is going to go up. Okay. There's an aggregate demand shock. So aggregate demand is, consumption, investment, government expenditure, net exports. That's obviously falling massively because consumption is going down, but exports are going up as well. So it's not a perfect linear line. So what's going to happen? There's a shift down, and then there's a contraction in output. There's new output and employment levels that shifts everyone down, and there's a negative bargaining gap. So the real wage, which is that picture up there at the very top, the real wage is not going to go up for a while. You're not going to rock up to your employer with 25% unemployment and say, "Hi, can I have a raise, please?" That's not realistic. Okay. And so you may see deflation. And indeed, finally, there's a negative bargaining gap. The Phillips curve shifts down, producing deflation. Do we have deflation right now? Well, it's certainly disinflation. The rate of inflation today is minus 1%. Okay. So all of this is not to sort of blast you with macroeconomics. My point is, these are the kinds of models that you could use to describe some of the issues that you are seeing in the world. Another way of thinking about this is looking at where economists get it wrong. So this is a good example of economic thinking at the start of the crisis. Okay, so flattening the epidemic curve of necessity deepens the recession curve. So up here, you're looking at new cases. So this red line is new cases without containment. So these are new cases of the virus. All right, it's a very high death toll. Lots of people die, and this is the blue line is what was called flattening the curve. So with containment policies, there are fewer deaths. So that's happy days. Fewer people die, and that's all good. Here, on the other side is the GDP loss. So gross domestic product is our measure of output in the economy. So it's the sale of final goods and services in a given year, and the value of all that. Okay, and it's falling. So with lots of containment policies, you see this dotted blue line. There's a huge fall in GDP, right? Without an economic rescue package, the death toll is low, but there's a huge recession. It's very severe. And with new cases without containment policies, you can see this little red line here. The economy is hit, but nowhere near as bad. So the thinking at the very start of this crisis was, ladies and gentlemen, the more you restrict the economy, the lower your deaths will be, the worse the economic output will be. So what you should expect to see at the end of this is very small numbers of deaths and huge falls in GDP, huge falls in output. Okay, this was the thinking at the start of the crisis. So Pierre-Olivier Grinchas from the University of California at Berkeley was the kind of key proponent of this. So again, remember, what you should expect to see here is very small, very low levels of death, huge falls in GDP. Okay, if this model is correct, that's what you should expect to see. Here's what actually happened. The theory is wrong. Okay, the theory is well wrong, as a matter of fact. There is little to no trade-off. This is a scatter plot of the change in real GDP. So GDP corrected for inflation. This is the change, and you can see it's negative for almost everyone. So this is the change from Q2 2019 to Q2 2020. Okay, so really capturing the initial impact of the crisis. And this is on the horizontal axis. On the vertical axis, you're looking at deaths per million. Okay, so these are the number of people who have died of the virus as a percentage of the population. Deaths per million. What you can see here is the countries with very low deaths, like their South Korea, okay, have very low falls in economic output. And remember the finding of our model, we were expecting to see very low levels of deaths. So this is a low level of death, should be associated with very high falls in GDP. We see precisely the opposite thing. There's little to no trade-off. So there's South Korea, Finland, Germany, and so forth. There's Ireland up there. So we're not doing too badly, but we're not great either. There's Sweden. So Sweden decided not really to do any lockdowns, and they suffered a greater fall in their GDP than Ireland did. So countries that have very low death rates experience the lowest falls in GDP. So the economic theory was wrong, ladies and gentlemen. And that's one of the brilliant things about economics, is that it never stops and you never stop learning. I'm at this 25 years, and I never stop learning, and it's what makes it a fascinating subject to study, because this model that I showed you earlier, this made total sense to me when I read it first. And the reality of the situation is exactly the opposite. The countries that have protected their populations have experienced the lowest falls in GDP. Okay, so why did I show you all that? The reason I showed you all that is to go back up here to the top and say the research should be based on the application of economic concepts and theory. So you should be doing something like this, where you say, here's the theory, here's the reality, here's my recommendation. Okay, something like that is very good. Okay, nearly there, folks. What is a good source? So the reality of the situation is you're going to need sources for this work. The sources are in the SEC documentation. They say 2 sources. I think you'll need far more. At least, you know, I won't give you an exact number, but 2 is far too small. Here are really good resources for you. So if you click any of these links, what you'll have are, you know, there's a UN database, and there's the COVID database, there's the OECD, so you can look at the policy trackers. So for example, you could choose to compare Ireland and Nigeria, or Ireland and Denmark, or something like that, if you wanted. This is the IMF's policy tracker, the Vox EU paper portal. This is the tracktherecovery.org, fantastic website. The CSO has Irish data, so the Central Statistics Office has Irish data, and this is the NESC report mentioned in the SEC. So click on them, have a look at them. They're all available for you. They're very, very interesting. And when you have a look at them, you will see that there's loads of data there to be gathered. But first, get your research question. First, really refine your research question. Okay, referencing. You must always cite your sources, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely always. The SEC say use 2. I say use, as a minimum, I say use far more. What you should think about citations are like an ancient form of hyperlinking. They're hundreds of years old, and the idea is everyone who's reading your work should be able to trace anything you anything you use back to the originator of the idea. Okay, there are loads of ways to cite and use citations. At this link here, if you click the link on the PowerPoint, it'll take you to the University of Limerick's guide to citations. And that covers everything: how to cite a web page, how to cite a blog, how to cite a tweet, whatever, right? Don't cite tweets. You know what I mean. And this final one here is how to reference using the Harvard system. This is a YouTube video made by my University of Limerick colleague on how to reference yourself. So it's 5 minutes long. You'll get it done. And you've already seen me use a reference here, Booth et al. 2016. Your teachers all know how to do this. They all went to college. They have the ability to show you this in 5 minutes flat. Just make sure you reference. You're getting marks for it. Don't lose silly marks on things like bad referencing, not citing tables, not structuring your answer. Okay, don't lose silly marks when you don't need to. Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, the secret sauce. Tips on writing, revising, and writing to be understood. This is the secret sauce. So if you kind of went to sleep there for the last few minutes, or it's 9 o'clock on a Monday morning and you're a bit like, who is this lad droning on at me? Just wake up for this bit here, okay? This is really, really important. When you write to structure your thinking, but you write to be understood as well, okay? So this is a pro tip for everyone here, okay? This is a book called Economical Writing. Purchase multiple copies of this. I have this book on my bookcase. I literally use it. It's not a Zoom background. Honestly, it's real. I have the previous version. It's very small. You'll get through it. Purchase this book. The better a writer you are, the more marks you'll get, not just in the economics written part, but in everything. Writing is like doing pull-ups for your ideas. It just makes them stronger, okay? And all writing is rewriting. So purchase multiple copies of McCluskey's book. You will simply thank me. She's amazing. She's a hero of mine, and she's one of the best writers in economics. So please just read her work, okay? If you don't have time, or if you haven't got the money to purchase her book, I've made you a summary of that book. It's available on the Dropbox link. It's literally just one page of her 10 big ideas, but she has 35 of them. And this is really important, folks. The biggest difference between a good writer and a poor writer is the writer's attitude to the first draft, okay? If your attitude to the first draft is, it's finished, hooray, go home, that's the wrong attitude, okay? You are a writer. You're not there to finish and just leave, and do something else, okay? You're there to make your ideas understood for the reader. That's what you're there to do, okay? And that requires rewriting, okay? Good writers see the first draft as a sketch, nothing more, nothing more. There's no pressure if it's crap, because you're gonna revise it again, okay? And then you have to refine and refine and refine the paper. So please, ladies and gentlemen, don't be writing this thing on the last day, okay? Start working at it, refine it, refine it, refine it, refine it, refine it. And when you do that, what you'll find is that it will evolve, it will change. And the more you sit with the idea, the better it will get. And that's absolutely vital, because the better it gets for you, the better it gets for the reader. And you'll enjoy the process too, because you'll be learning. That's why I love researching, because I never, ever stop learning. It's fantastic. It's sort of it's an infinity pool of economic ideas. You can never, ever, ever get bored with it. It is truly fascinating to be able to do this stuff. Okay. And you're all very lucky to do so, like I said. Okay, summary. It's fascinating. Economic research is fascinating. It's very important. I'm really glad you all get the chance to do this. Use the craft of research and economical writing to structure your answer. Make it your answer, okay? And you'll be fine. All right, I'll take some questions via Zoom, if that's okay. So let me just stop sharing my screen. Or maybe I'll keep sharing the screen. And if people have questions, no, I'll stop, because then I can't see the questions. Stop sharing. If people have questions, would you like to send me questions on the chat, or do you want to just turn on your video and ask me questions? That's fine too. So this is normally the bit where everyone starts sort of looking at their digital feet. It's fine to do that, but if you have any questions, we have about 24 minutes or so. So I'm very, very happy to answer any questions that you guys have while I'm here. So feel free.
Stephen, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Carolyn. How are you doing?
I am good. Thanks for that presentation. That's very good.
My pleasure.
Yeah, the thing I suppose that secondary teachers are caught with is that you have to pitch it at both ordinary and higher. So it's kind of a struggle when with some of the ordinary level students, they might have some of that modelling kind of,
Sure.
they might find that difficult. But I was looking at this stuff and I was thinking of, you know, looking at the sustainable goals in 2015 and
Sure.
then to kind of look within it, I was going to focus kind of on the equality, like look at the hardest hit sectors or groups of people within as a result of COVID, and look, you know, clusters that arose because maybe you have minimum wage workers who can't afford Dublin rent all grouping together.
Sure.
You know, and then the pent up risk that you have in that sort of housing or direct provision units and that sort of thing. So maybe focus on that quality issue, and then that could drive into a policy on government policy on housing and things like that. But I was wondering, like for equality, what would your kind of your models or your concepts would you tie into?
Sure. Well, so a basic version of that equality idea is the notion that in equilibrium, you know, everyone's wages for identical workers, you know, if Carolyn and Stephen are precisely qualified, or if they're identical clones apart from their gender, they should have the same wage. But in practice and in fact, they do not. There are reasons for that. You could investigate those things. The inequality issue is about social sustainability, right? So societies don't tend to function well if they're unequal. Or very, very unequal, you know, and I think that's sort of very important. So you could talk about it that way. You could say, look, an unequal society is corrosive of social sustainability, and that is therefore corrosive of economic sustainability, right? You'll have to make the link to that, maybe using a historical analogy where, you know, after crises, countries with lots and lots of inequality tend to do badly. You know, Ireland actually doesn't have that much inequality. Income inequality is not too bad. Wealth inequality is not great, but it's actually better than it is across all of Europe, you know? So maybe you could make the comparison between, I don't know, Ireland and Portugal, which does have a genuinely large wealth inequality problem.
But, you know, as a result of COVID, you have a lot of the minimum wage workers are in those sectors that are going to be the hardest hit. And some of your clusters came from there. So it's kind of the impact of, I know in terms of our Gini coefficient and all that, we're okay, but in terms of like, it says a lot about, I think, housing policy or how we've set up Dublin, and it's shown a lot of that, I think, because you cannot afford Dublin rents at whatever it is, close enough to $2,500 on minimum wage, unless you've multiple occupancy.
And, you know, and that then is corrosive of environmental sustainability, because of course everyone's getting sick.
And that's what I think I was trying to take from. I looked at some of that social justice stuff, which is quite good. Now I know it's left, but it's quite good. And like they were saying that we're only really, you know, in order for everyone to stay healthy, everybody has to be healthy. And if you have people in situations where you can't engage in social distancing and that sort of stuff because of your, sorry.
Hey, Caroline, I kind of lost you there.
Sorry, because of how you're set up.
Sorry, Karen, I've kind of lost you there. You're kind of going a bit laggy.
I was saying, like, if you're in a house with to look at, really. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, we just lost you there for a second, but I think I understand. I think I understand the issue. I think what you're going to need to do with those is you're going to need to get a model, right? And I have some stuff on the gender pay gap. If you just, what I'll do is I'll email everyone after this model on the gender pay gap that might be useful. But I think you have a wider idea, you have a wider conception of inequality, so distributional issues really leading to growth difficulties, leading to environmental stuff. So it's that link between growth and distribution that really matters. So here,
sorry, one other thing, you know, like the environmental end of it, you could just, I mean, you could tie it into just because there's an opportunity to kind of grow green going forward, you know, and that you'd have the multiplier effect and everything like that if they started, I don't know, major investment in that whole area.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the interesting things here is that you can link it to the policy stuff around the new Green Deal, which Ursula von der Leyen she announced two
Yeah.
weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. So that's really good
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
Thank you very much, Caroline.
Thank you.
Eamon says, Eamon Cosgrave on the text says, what do you understand by the term sustainability? You may have covered it. I was 10 minutes late. Sorry, Eamon, no worries. What I understand by the term sustainability is a very long-term idea. So the idea is that society and the economy can reproduce itself over time. I don't know what this means, but I hope it's good. So it's a long-term idea, okay? That society and the economy understand itself over time, which is good.
Steve,
Yep,
can you hear me?
I can.
Just wondering if you're going to do the project, what would you do?
If I was going to do the project, what would I do? Oh, I would look at the budget deficit. So I would look at how countries that have spent more, countries that spend more, how well do they do? So you choose to the government G minus T, government expenditure minus taxes. Obviously taxes are falling, government expenditure to rise. The gap between the two is the budget deficit, right? So in Ireland it's like 10 billion a year. With 10 billion right now, actually it's going to be about 20 billion at the end of the year. So if you choose to make that bigger, right, then you're spending more money now as opposed to later. So there's that idea about fiscal sustainability. That's what I would look at, but that's because I'm a nerd about that sort of stuff. You know, if that's just what I happen to be interested in.
Okay, you lot, did you get all this? Did you get this? Are you finished now? Where are you?
Thanks,
Okay.
Steve.
The balance sheet. Okay,
You're
go.
welcome. You're welcome. Chris asks, could you give us a sample title based on the theme? Yeah, I think I just did there. I am studying the fiscal sustainability of long-term budget deficits as a result of COVID-19, because I want to find out whether deficit spending makes sense into the longer term. Stephen, do you know if there, this is from William Brown, do you know if there are any quality sources on the effect of the 1918 pandemic on the Irish economy? Yes, I do, William. So if you look at the work of Dr. Ida Milne, M-I-L-N-E, she has a fantastic paper, or sorry, a book on the economic consequences of the pandemic in 1918. Have a look. It's superb, really, really superb. So she is a lecturer in Carlow, and her work on the pandemic, like it's published by Manchester University Press, and it's absolutely superb. I can't recommend it enough in terms of that. So yeah, I think that would be that'd be very, very advisable. Any more questions? So I think we have about 5-6 more minutes. So Kieran asks, would a project focusing on the impact on sustainability on a specific industry in Ireland be seen as a suitable research line of inquiry? So I think the answer is yes. If you can focus this, remember, you're not given a theme, you're given the theme. You're not told how to answer the question. You choose how to answer the question, Kieran. So Kieran or Kieran, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So you choose that. If that's how you want to have a go at it, and you feel like you can get quality data, a quality economic model, and then really be able to pull it in underneath that theme, you're going to be grand. So, hello. Oh,
Would
yeah.
you recommend getting in touch with college lecturers or TDs as your resource?
Yeah, but remember, you have to cite your work. Sorry, what's your name?
Rory O'Hanlon, sorry.
Hi, Rory. So you have to cite your work. So conversation with Micheál Martin TD, like that's good, but you got to transcribe it. You got to publish it somewhere. It's probably a lot better that you use a piece of research from one of the links that I shared, or some other kind of if you like quasi-official source, because then you're able to cite it properly, and you wouldn't be you know, people couldn't have a go at you for not citing it properly. The other major thing is, I would certainly, if you have access to a TD, I mean, everyone has access to a TD, I guess, but I would certainly use them as background. So try to see if you can find a way.
Okay, we all finished that question. Yeah.
Nobody messes with Carolyn. Absolutely nobody. Okay. Well, I've lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, sorry, Rui. So the idea here is you can get information from anywhere. Talk to everyone. Talk to your friends. Talk to your parents. I mean, absolutely talk to TDs or lecturers, of course. They'd all love to help. I'm sure. The issue really more is how can you reference and really back up what you're saying. So that's what I would do. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So in terms of like when they say primary research, those links would be considered your primary research, would they?
No, primary research is gathering your own data, right? So that is you precisely going out and asking a TD, you know, but you would need a way to write that up. In you might even need to attach the interview to the back of the thing. I mean, be guided by what the SEC say, so they mightn't want that. But if they do, and if you can do primary research, rock on and do it. But it would be difficult to do it well. You know, I think that's probably true. And Lisa's actually asking. Lisa and Michelle are both saying, you know, Lisa and thank you, Rory. So Lisa and Michelle are both saying, do you anticipate students doing primary research? Like, it's a 1,500 word piece. Students have a lot of other things to do. COVID-19 is happening. I would imagine primary research would be quite difficult for most people. And, you know, there might be ethical implications. There might be child protection implications. So if I were you, I would focus on secondary and tertiary research. So Stuart Borthwick asks, what do students in college struggle most with in a research study, and how do you overcome this? So great question, Stuart. So I supervise probably 20 undergraduate projects every year, and every single student struggles with the definition of their problem, struggle with that first paragraph. That's really where the work comes in. If you get that right, the rest of it's pretty easy, actually, to do. So that's really how I would focus. So John Walsh asks, where will the easiest place to lose marks be in the overall project, Stephen? The easiest place to lose marks is probably, like, again, I'm not a corrector, I'm not a teacher, I don't play one on the internet, you guys are the experts here. But in terms of losing, like the easiest place to lose marks would be not referencing, not structuring, and properly having the stuff together, right? Where the bulk of the marks are, so 40 marks are actually going for how you work out the research project. So that's where the writing and the structured thinking really comes in. So the clearer you can make that section, the higher your marks are going to be, for sure. For sure. Okay. All right. So I think most of you finished your classes at 9:50. So I wanted to be sort of respectful of your time. And to thank you all very much for logging on, for asking questions, for getting involved. You know, the University of Limerick is like, they pay my wages. I'm a public servant. It's my job to help you guys do stuff. So if you want other things like this, let me know. I'll be more than happy to get stuck in and do something else, okay? Because you guys are doing a lot of work in a very, very challenging set of scenarios. And if I can help, or if any of my colleagues can help, please let me know, because yeah, we're that's what we're here for, okay? Something else. Yeah, and I think a couple of people are going to make this available on their websites. So I'll put this link up on Twitter later. I'll email the talk out to all of you, everyone who's registered. So there's like 200 and something people registered. So I'll email it all out to you. And I think the BSTAI, they're fantastic people, the Business Studies Teachers Association of Ireland, they're going to put this talk on their website as well. So thank you very much to them as well, particularly to Mairead. All right, guys.
Now,
I think we'll. I think we'll.
Ready to go on to the next.
Oh, cheers! There's Mairead. How you doing? Yeah. How are you doing?
Are you good? Look, I just wanted to say thank you so much.
You're all happy enough to leave appreciation.
Incredibly
informative.
And I know
Just before reevaluation fixed out
informative as well. And I suppose there was an awful lot that we actually found out there that we had no clue about beforehand, or were grappling to come to terms with. You really made it very, very concise for everybody there.
Thank
so
you.
We're very grateful for that. Can I ask you just one last question? That
Go for it.
most students around the country are looking for topics at the moment.
Okay.
And the temptation is, some of them are believing, well, I could do that, but it'll be too boring. What would you say, like in terms of the exciting project compared with a very straightforward, we'll say commoner gardener type of project in the differential of the marking?
Sure. Look, I think that the main thing here is, can you execute the question well, right? So research is like diving, okay? So the people who do a simple dive really well get higher marks than somebody who tries something really complicated and does it badly, okay? So, but asking a simple research question is not easy, and you should spend time on it. So I would try to find the things that you're passionate about, that you care about, that you think matter. And so if you're really into the environment, or you're really into social issues, social justice issues, if you really care about macroeconomics, whatever it is, if that's your thing, then have a look and answer a question that really, really suits you. You know, so what if you can't find something that you're passionate about, just keep looking, because it's out there. Like, you know, economics is there for everybody. And, you know, a good place to start is anger. So what makes you angry, right? Okay. If something makes you angry, if you know, Carolyn very rightly talked about, you know, homelessness and poor wage conditions. If that annoys you, if that angers you, it means that you're probably passionate about it, right? If there's a gender pay gap issue, if you're really annoyed at the structure of the economy, if you feel like capitalism is broken or whatever, just go with that, because it means you care about it, right? And so go with where you're angry. Siobhan McKiernan says, should every student in the class have a different research question? I don't know, Siobhan, is the honest answer. I think everyone's going to have to submit their own individual answer anyway. So, I mean, if you asked 100 economists, you know, what should the debt to GDP ratio of Ireland be in 2022? I guarantee you they won't have a single answer for you. You know, in fact, if you ask 100 economists, you'll probably get 200 answers. So I'm sure it'll be the same with your students. The thing about economics that's beautiful is that the questions never change, but the answers always do, you know? And so, yeah, I'm sorry to give you a on the one hand, on the other hand, answer, Siobhan, but honestly, that is my best answer there. So Katrina Nagel says, I missed the start of the webinar. Is it possible to watch it back? Yes, Katrina, I have been recording it, and I'm going to send it back. I'm going to email it to everyone when it produces a link. I guess it'll produce a link. I literally just bought Zoom for you guys, so I have no idea what'll happen next. Presumably a link will arrive, I guess. But yeah, that's it. So I better go, you guys, because I know you all have other classes to go to, and etc. So let me just finish by saying thank you all very much to all the participants. Thank you very much to everyone who logged in, and I'll be in touch. And if you need anything else, let me know. Oh yeah, and look at all the various promotional things for the University of Limerick's courses. They're all excellent, and you know, you should all do them, etc., etc. Okay, great. Right, thank you, and have a nice day, everyone. See you later. Thank you. Bye.